Haha, that looks really cute.
Oh, I love it!
Welcome to the Photography Podcast with your host, Mike Cassidy.
Hey, how are you, everybody? My name is Mike Cassidy, and I'm a boudoir photographer from New Jersey, and this is my show. What I do is talk with people who are just starting out on their photography voyages, as well as established pros, to learn about the hurdles they've had to overcome to get their businesses going. I'm looking to bring you personal stories which will help you connect to the fact that you're not alone in your struggles. Along the way, we'll probably have a few laughs, but the goal is to get you some actionable advice to help your business grow. So stay tuned. You never know what you may learn. Oh, hello. My name is Michael, and I'm your neighbor. Boy, what a difference a couple of weeks makes, huh? Well, this evening I'm coming to you from my secret underground bunker. This place is stockpiled with toilet paper as high as the eye can see. If you listen, you can hear my cave. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to our regular, happy, upbeat music. Ah, there we go. Well, the truth of the matter is I'm not located too far from New York City, which is really the epicenter of this mess in the United States, and it's quite a situation. New Jersey, where I am, is all shut down. Everybody's been told to stay home, shelter in place, and not too far over in New York City, they're preparing for the worst, and cases are still all in the upswing. It's a tough time, man. Let me tell you. The economy has essentially ground to a halt in many industries, this photography industry too. I know there's a lot of weddings have been forced to cancel, venues aren't allowed to be open, people can't get together. It's a mess. So the photography business is feeling the effect of this situation, just like everybody else. You know, first and foremost here, I want you to take care of yourself, but you may find that suddenly many of you have some free time on your hands. So why not put it to good use and make the most out of this situation, so when we all get through this, we'll be ready to go and stronger. I was thinking, you know, over the weekend, and happened to be chatting with Trevor the other day and mentioned to him if he wanted to come on and do a show about, you know, what was going on, and he was all for it. So we planned this session with short notice, and we started talking today, and really the situation kind of diverted into this entire conversation about making a business better. You know, I guess that's what happens when you get a couple of people together who really enjoy what they do. It's hard to keep good people down. You know, we're always thinking of ways of improving and how to make this available time useful to improve our businesses. So this was originally going to be the quarantine episode, but the reality is we didn't have that much talk about quarantining. There was a lot of talk about things we'll be doing during this downtime and a lot of other topics. So this episode is deep on photography, nutritional learning. So when you're tired of watching The Family Guy on Hulu, this is a good episode to listen to. So grab a pad, grab a pencil, take some notes. You're going to need to. Give it a listen. And most importantly, everybody stay safe during this. Shelter in place. And hopefully we get through this all in a short time and back to normal. So in the meantime, enjoy this episode and talk to you soon. Okay. I'm with Trevor, and we are on. This is the quarantine show. we're all quarantined.
Yeah, this is how interaction is just going to be from here on in, right? It's just you and me and two webcams.
Yeah, so we'll chat for a while, see what sort of comes up. But even before we hit record here, I was talking to Trevor a bit. He was talking about how this is reminiscent of the Spanish flu. the early part of I guess that was like the 1918s, 1920s, sort of around that time, and talk a little bit about, what's going on today, since it's such a big topic, this virus and how it's spreading. And outside of the epicenter of everything in here in the United States, outside of New York, New York is essentially shut down. They're turning basically like convention centers into hospitals, and it's just fear. And it's hard to know exactly, too, what's going on, because it's, I guess it's so new and it happens so fast, and they just want people to be safe and stay home. So out in New Jersey here since Monday, I'm even losing track of days, the state has been shut down. All businesses have been shut down. Not allowed to leave except to get food or gas or anything like that. You're supposed to sit at home, and it makes sense. And Trevor's out in Toronto, so we'll talk a little bit about his impact. He was just traveling. So maybe we'll talk about some happier things first, because I saw before we get into to that part of the message, I saw you. What was I saw you in Las Vegas. So what was your? Yeah, so
I went down to WPPI about, I guess, 4 weeks ago, and that was kind of the first bit of this little trip. And then I booked some shoots down there. I was out in Death Valley probably 8 years ago, and it totally got the better of me, because it was just so windy and so impossible to shoot in. I couldn't get any photos of it. Yeah. But this time I went back and I settled the score. Did an amazing salt flat / sand dune shoot out there, and that went really well. Also did another shoot at some kind of ghost town. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but did another great shoot. They just had a bunch of old, like, 1950s, 60s era cars, old buildings. I mean, the guy basically rents it out, and he charges like I think it's like $5 or $10 an hour or something like that.
To use the location?
Yeah, to use the location. And during WPPI, this guy's probably making like bank.
People want to go out. And,
It was crawling with other photographers when I went to scout it the night before. The morning after, when we did do our shoot, it was very quiet. But, oh man, those were two great locations. And then from there, I went to Costa Rica and was living in this little surf town called Santa Teresa, kind of like right on the Pacific coast. And I went there to learn Spanish, primarily, but then I ended up surfing every morning. And, surfing, if you call surfing falling over, then that's the surfing
hard.
I did. Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard to live was a surfer at a much younger age, but it's fun. It's nice to be outside.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, so I did the surfing, then I do a few hours of Spanish each day, and then I go to yoga at night, and it was fantastic. It was probably one of the best, most chill, relaxing vacations I've ever done. And then I unfortunately had to cut it a bit short by about 3 or 4 days trying to get home because... as I was saying to you earlier off air, like if I hadn't left when I did, I think if I was there another day, I might still be there. So that was tough. But because the little beach town, there's not a lot of people there, but they slowly started shutting things down. Like they started shutting down.
Oh, even down there.
Yeah, they were shutting down the beach parties. They were shutting down the restaurants. And I was just starting to think like, well, if I get stuck here, this is not going to be fun. So let's just get home, pay a little bit to book a different flight. And I got back, and I've been in self-isolation since then, which is about 3 or 4 days now. And it's not so bad. I mean, I'm used to working from home, so I'm just doing my thing and
making sure everything's okay.
Yeah. Okay. I've had some great friends who, stocked me up before I got back. Because they live in the area, and so they went and got me groceries and stuff, and I basically traded them for toilet paper, and it was great. Yeah, because
it's funny what becomes valuable.
Little did I know that the super sale they had on toilet paper, where I bought something like 80 rolls, was going to come back and help me later.
There you go.
I had no idea because it was like 4 months ago.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny how things change in 2 weeks. But what did you see in Vegas? What was going on at the at the show there? Because I saw you out in the desert. I mean, I'm jumping around a little bit. But I saw your video out in the desert too, and some photos there. But what was the show like, or what did you see there?
I was there mostly with the Do More photography group, doing some shoot-arounds there. I to be honest, I just felt like I was getting stale. I just needed to see how someone else ran a shoot and how other people interact with models and clients and stuff, and I just needed like an infusion of stuff. I think,
ideas.
Yeah, like I think as photographers, we're kind of like, you know, we live in isolation a little bit too much, and we kind of, because we do our own thing. I mean, you might have a studio manager or an assistant or something that kind of gives you a little insight. But generally speaking, we're all catty to each other for some unknown reason that I can't understand. And we kind of like just don't share as much as we probably should. And it's nice to go somewhere and just talk to other people and just yammer on about any number of things and just sit down, have some good discussions, and you leave feeling inspired. I walked around the show floor, I think, for all of maybe 45 minutes.
It was more for the people that you're going than for the displays.
Trust me, I have worked far too many trade shows to ever want to go into one of those and see anything. Like, everything's available online. You know, if somebody makes a new gadget, gizmo or something like that, there's already like a Kickstarter video you can watch. There's like, somebody has already made a video. Why do I need to go touch it? I like, and then, you know, you got all these camera booths. Like, it's a lens. You know, like, if it suits your needs, buy it. I don't need to touch it.
I wonder if that's a bit of an anachronism in that respect in those shows. You're right, that people know about things, and if they're interested, it's on blogs, it's on websites, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's just not my thing. I mean, I'm jaded to it. I obviously worked in the photo industry for 10 plus years, well, 12 or 13 plus years, both in the retail side and the distribution side. So I kind of, I like, all this stuff is like, okay, if I need a 135 f2, I'm just going to go buy a 135 f2. Like, it doesn't, like, okay, whether it's the Zeiss, the Fuji, or the whoever, like, I don't care. It just, read a few reviews online, look at a few images, and like, if I hate it, I'll return it.
Yeah.
Like, trade shows, just tripping over all those people in there just seems so.
I've never been to a photography one, but I have been to plenty in the past too, and I have no. Again, interest in going booth to booth and talking with people, saying the same thing for the 85th time in that day, and explaining something. But I guess some people like it, but that's not my thing. Yeah,
go for the learning. I mean, WPPI is a fantastic learning opportunity, and I went to, oh my God, I think it was Rich Harrington's presentation. It was like kind of a full day thing on video production, and although some of it like was total review for me, I could see like some people are like, frame rates, what? Like, some stuff is review, but then the other production side of things, I was like, oh yeah, like, let's put it together like that, and just little snippets of ideas that lead to bigger ideas are what make those things worth going to. And I definitely left feeling very inspired, and took a whole bunch of ideas with me, and I wrote them down kind of on my iPad and went, okay, I'm going to stash these. I am not working on my vacation.
And then you'll put them together now in quarantine.
And now I have all this time in quarantine to do all sorts of things. Like, like when I came back, I was scheduled to have an open house at my studio. I guess it would have been this coming Saturday. But I canceled that about a week ago, realizing, like, this is not a good idea to even try to run this or anything like that, because it would have been obviously canceled based on current guidelines. But, I had some time, and I still have lots of time, and I presume there's going to be even more time.
More time.
Because I think the reality is this isn't going to end by the beginning of April. Like, any kind of like getting back to normal doesn't just like, okay, tomorrow everybody go do your thing. Like, this has to be like a phased roll in, and I don't know what that looks like. That's I think the thing that's keeping me up at night.
it's all going to be new to us too.
Yeah.
I'll have to let you know how this all shakes down, because we'll probably be a week or two ahead, or whatever happens here is going to roll out that way.
Yeah. I mean, the good news, I think, is that, when you look at areas of China which were hard hit, and Italy, you're starting to see a decline in cases because the quarantines are starting to take effect. So it's starting to get better. And once you have enough, once you can control all the cases, then all of a sudden things start getting more normal. It's just like you don't have outbreak situations. So, because I know even one of my makeup artists is like, I got to be really careful about who I, what work I accept, because my parents are older and I don't want to infect them.
Yep, situation.
Yeah, exactly. My parents are not young by any stretch. I mean, I say they're old as you know what, but that's just joking. But now it's actually a serious thing. So I haven't seen them because they were in Florida for 3 weeks before I left, and so I haven't seen them in almost 2.5 months, which is kind of weird. And we're FaceTiming and stuff, which is great. Not quite the same. Also, even just really good friends, friends that I just enjoy physically being present. We don't even have to talk, just being in their presence because they're so close to me. It's hard not being around and just FaceTiming, and that's it. So who knows?
Things are changing.
Yep.
But I think just going to go back and talk about what you were talking about, getting new ideas from people. And I think you are 1,000% right, is people work very independently and alone as photographers. And then, it's good to talk to other people, get other ideas. And I've always done things this way. And then maybe I'll try this, or maybe I'll try that. So I think that is one thing that is great, because you're right, you can get stale. I think you do the same thing over and over, and face it, you're not reinventing the wheel every time you go in with somebody. And I think it can lead to a little bit of, I don't want to say boredom, but, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Is there anything that you try to do to freshen your routine a little bit, or you pretty much get, just constantly looking for new ideas, or keeping it the same?
Yeah, I think I'm always looking for new ideas. I'm constantly on, Pinterest, and just, it's almost like, with boudoir posing, there's really only 4 positions you can have someone, right? You can have someone sitting, standing, laying down, or kneeling, right? But how can you take any of those 4 and do something different with it? I know I have my money shots that will always sell, and that's fine. I could just shoot those from now until the end of time, and I'd probably be okay. I just find it very boring to do it. So
for personal reasons, personal growth, keep on learning.
Just keep on learning. And it's just, I think the thing I really started looking at probably about 1.5 years ago was really exploring direction of light. I've always been a backlight, side light, I love this kind of look type thing. I've never been into the very bright, airy boudoir, which is just light everywhere. But, just turning people around in the studio to get that shot was a big thing. And my biggest problem was, if I was using if I'm using a strobe, it's kind of easy. You just swing the strobe around. But if I was using window light or a combination thereof, it was tough because you shoot the wrong way, and now you're getting all of the crap in the back of your studio that you don't want. So I built this giant rolling wall. It's about 2.5 feet wide. I store all my V-flats in it, and it's about 10 feet wide and about 8.5, 9 feet tall. So it just rolls around. So I just place that in behind. So now I have a wall that I can effectively make a room out of.
So you can get some new angles.
Yeah. So I started shooting a lot more direct, broader lit directional stuff. And that was kind of my first thing. And then after that, it started to be okay, well, how could I light a certain pose? More slender bodies are obviously easier to shoot because you can sometimes do more with them. But I was really focusing on curvier body types. How can I do a pose like that with someone who is, you know, like, logically speaking, you're always thinking like somebody who's a little bigger, you're trying to elongate them, not crunch them in. But like, how can I do that and like use a hand to cover something up, just so I can get more of a variety of poses and looks, and just using selective crops to get what I want. So like that challenge to myself to work with every body type has always been there. But just really striving for different angles of light, fresh ideas, and also like the communication. Like one of the workshops I attended was like the way that they worked with individuals was like very different from me. It was more about that kind of almost connection with yourself and they were almost doing the shoot more like a therapy session.
Yeah, as soon as I hear that, my back starts to cringe, and so, but I'll let you continue on this.
Yeah, no, it's there were parts of it that I went, not for me, but then I went, like there's little bits and pieces you can kind of cherry pick out of it that you go, interesting, because I've always felt that boudoir, and I've always said I am a therapist with a camera, whether I like it or not. People get out of this body acceptance. Like that's what we do. And I mean, a lot of people live with the shame of them not looking like what they see in all the magazines. So there is an element to that. I've never really like said, okay, like I'm a therapist with a camera. I've joked about it a couple times, but never went that way. But then the way they coached the person through some of the poses was like interesting. It's like, you know, just touch those legs, like, you know, they're perfectly imperfect, like just little things like that. I'm not sure I could say it. It doesn't necessarily feel genuine from me yet, because I haven't explored it, but it was interesting. And I felt that like done correctly, it could be really empowering for someone. And that's the beauty of photography, right? Like no two photographers are ever going to be the same.
Right.
You and I, despite looking very similar, you know, we could
work with people very differently. Right.
You know, you could record a session with you and a model and me and a model, same location, same model, and you'd look at the two interactions and the two shoots from a behind the scenes kind of standpoint, and it's completely different. And
so
that's
the work, I think, reflects, I think, in essence, the photographer's personality to an extent. So it is a reflection, and that's why things can be different in that range. The one thing that always has me a little bit wary, like I said, my spine just cringes as soon as I hear that touchy-feely kind of a stuff, because you're right. And, you know, in this day and age, there's certain things you're not allowed to talk about anymore. But it seemed like, you know, I don't know, it was 2011, 12-ish, 7 years ago, there's a lot of people that pushed all their chips in on this empowerment movement that was in photography, and I think they were trying to make it something or add another layer to it. And it doesn't always work in that way. You know, I've worked with tons and tons of people, and, you know, it is a great experience for people to come in. They walk out really feeling energized and having a great time. But at the same time, I'm not thinking I'm some, you know, spiritual Sherpa that's there to, you know, provide life coaching to somebody. And I had no one ever came to me and sat down with me and they were like, Michael, you know, we need to change my life. It was a fun activity, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that on that level, I was advertising or wanted to be seen as someone who is changing somebody's life. So I was very wary to go down.
Yeah, I agree. Like I know I fall somewhere probably in the middle there, because I mean I definitely don't feel I fit in the category of, like, I don't know, whimsical empowerment or whatever the term. I don't know how to verbalize that, because it doesn't. I personally don't feel it's genuine as a guy like that coming from me. I mean, like it could, I guess, but it doesn't, I basically tell my clients like, hey, listen, do this for you because you're worth it and you get out of it what you want. Some people it's more transformative than others. Some people it's more of just like an exhilarating rush. But I guess I don't try to pinpoint one way or the other. Like they have to feel a certain way about it.
Yeah. You don't know what's going on with somebody else's life. And I don't feel it's my business to like sit down and have a personal coaching session with someone. So how would I know if someone is how they feel on the inside? And you know, it's not part of my job. I assume everyone's fine that's coming to see me. They're just a little bit like a roller coaster ride. Like, you know what I mean?
I definitely get the information from them by both talking to them at the pre-shoot wardrobe consult, which I do, but also just from the questionnaire that I ask them, like just simple questions. Like you could just kind of interpret and read between the lines a little bit. Like I don't ever ask like what's your least favorite part of your body. That would never be a part of this. But like the why are you doing it? Usually gives me quite a lot of insight into like some other stuff related to body issues. And I mean, a lot of my clients, I'm going to say like 80% of my clients are probably moms, probably 35 and up. And they struggle with the idea that they have to look like they did when they were 20. And, you know, it's nice being able to change that and make them go, holy crap, I'm actually like a total knockout. Wow. Okay, cool. And you give them that confidence boost. And that's kind of where I'm at with that scope of things, I guess. But yeah, it's different how everybody shoots for sure. Yeah, and I love it. It's
for some people that may be fine. You know, there may be, and there used to be websites and everything was, you know, change your life and all these quotes that people would use. And I guess if that fits you as a person and you're really looking to cry and weep with people when they come in and go through this giant emotional experience, if that works for you, I think that's great. I know that wouldn't be genuine to me. And I know, like I hear from you, it doesn't sound like you do the same thing, but everybody has their way, I think, of finding their own path. But I think I was more on the not resistant isn't the right word, but it didn't go in that direction. And I think a lot of these people have fallen by the wayside, I think, because, you know, their work wasn't so great. And I think after all, you know, no matter how much preachy emotional stuff you go in, people are going to get pictures. And if the pictures don't look good, what is everything else for?
Yeah. I mean, that's of course so subjective too, right? Like, I mean, what is a great picture to somebody? I mean, sometimes it's just that connection, right? Like it doesn't have to be technically superb. It just has to create a resonance with someone, and that's why people vibe with other people, I guess. And that's kind of one of the more interesting aspects of I guess being a photographer and how you market yourself. Like you really have to be genuinely you, because if you're trying to be someone else, especially like if your website kind of like doesn't really reflect your own personality and stuff, like people kind of pick up on that, and it doesn't always work, and it just feels odd, because you see a lot of sites that are just kind of recycled material. Like when you're newer, you're kind of like struggling to put stuff together, so you half plagiarize something, and like I've seen it because I've had people copy stuff off of my site, and I'm going like,
I found identical copies of my websites online. I really have.
To be honest, it's only because a client pointed it out to me. I could never go out and search this kind of stuff because I frankly just don't care. Like if you want to rip it off, like that's your prerogative. I mean, I'd hope that you'd stop doing it, but at the same time, you know, it's also not genuine to your business. Because if you're trying to emulate my business and you're not me, that's not going to work for you in the long run.
I agree. I agree. And I think people struggle at first. And one thing with maybe it's even photography in general, we're talking about what we do in specific, but when people wake up one day, whatever it is, that idea that they decide, I'm suddenly become a women's photographer, you know, they go on Amazon and buy their camera, and they go on Wix or Squarespace and start a website, and suddenly they think they're a pro, and that really doesn't work in that matter. And I've repeated this before, and I've talked to people, and I said, well, what if you just woke up and decided you want to be Eddie Van Halen one morning, and you run down to the Guitar Center and you go in and tell the guy, I want the same Eddie Van Halen model, and you race home. Doesn't mean you're a professional guitar player.
No.
Doesn't mean that suddenly bands are going to start contacting you and the next thing you're on the road with a summer tour and so forth. But it's a long, long, long road. You're practicing for years and you don't learn overnight. And I think that's the same way that sort of photography goes, but somehow people see it as the opposite, that they can just buy that camera, create that website, deem themselves a pro, and suddenly people should be flooding to them just because they say they're here. And you're right, it's more complicated than that. And I think people do struggle at first. They don't have a message. They don't know what they are yet in terms of photography. That's something that evolves over time to sort of create your cult, just like you would create a style playing a guitar. You know, at first you may get books or copy people online, but that's not really you. I guess that's you learn in the way that you learn, but it takes a long time to find your own rhythm and get your own style and your own message. And I think people just grasp at first. They say, well, this person's doing this and this person's doing this, so I should do it too. And in this day, it's so easy to copy other people's ideas. So they just amalgamate all this stuff and put it on their website because they see everybody else doing it. So I think that's why we're part of that. Where part of that comes from. And hopefully over time, if you put in the time and the energy, you start to figure that's not really me, and you can start to adjust those things a little bit. But I guess you need a place somewhere.
You absolutely have to start somewhere. And I mean, I remember when I first started out, it was, I guess just due to my own personal nature, I was kind of insular. I didn't want to look like anybody else. So that was a little different, and I didn't subscribe to all the cookie cutter packages that were out there, because there's a lot of people offering training right now.
It's too many people.
And it kind of clouds you. And I mean, everybody's trying to hustle it, and everybody, like, there's probably one or two good ones and like 15 bad ones. That are just like, yeah, well, if you offer a bunch of free model call type sessions, you'll get a bunch of clients and you'll make some money right off the bat. But that's not a sustainable business model.
No.
And they're not really teaching you that. And then, God forbid, they're like, okay, well, you've done this. Well, guess what? There's part 2 now. And then that's even more money. And
it's more of a money suck than
it's kind of like, I equate it to the gold rush. And by that I mean that during the gold rush in whether it be the California, Yukon, wherever, the people who got rich weren't the miners. It was the people supplying the miners. So you'd have a miner go out there and they'd kind of like start buying land claims and start doing their thing and digging through the dirt, and they'd find some gold. But then there'd be people to basically extract that gold from them in town, whether it be like the person who's going to sell you all the pickaxes and shovels, the prostitutes, the bars, the whoever, right? Like they're the ones who are legitimately getting rich, not the miner. And it's kind of the same in photography. So I always caution people with who you are going to interact with some of these sales programs, because they all seem to promise a lot. And I've done a bunch of them, and there's been some great ideas with some of them. But at the same time, like you really do have to be careful, because it can be quite a money pit if not really carefully considered.
I agree with you. And there's been an explosion over the past couple of years of training courses and people selling, and not so much of the digital products. I get it. So you make a bunch of Lightroom presets and you want to save something like that or sell something like that, and that's fine. What always has me scratching my head is exactly what you said, is that everybody's an expert now. Mm-hmm. Everybody is a trainer. Everybody is like a mentor. And I don't know if that's something for $29.95 you can purchase. What does that say about someone's wealth of information that they've built up over the years?
I'll tell you, half the time those aren't $29.95. Like, well, $2,990.
But yeah,
they're not. They're like, a lot of those are really not inexpensive. So, be very careful with who you're putting your money with. And if they're at all secretive about what their process is or how they're going to interact with you and stuff like that, just run away, because like a lot of times there's like this wall of like they have this information and it's actually very limited, but if they just told you what they were going to do for you, you'd be like, well, wait, I'm already doing that. Like you're just going to run like an extra Facebook ad and what? Like, so you got to be slightly wary of that. And that's one thing I'd always caution new photographers on, is just, there's no cookie cutter way of doing this. You have to like slog it out, and you'll be doing this for 5 to 8 years before you see real, tangible, sustainable money. And you sometimes, like, if you're going to spend $4,000 on some training thing, just imagine what $4,000 does for you in basically ads and awareness. There's a lot better places you can sometimes put your money, but if you really need that push, maybe research them and find the right one. But
I'm sure there are good, solid. See, my first thought on this is that if I were starting and I needed a mentor, or I needed to go in what we do, especially, I would thinking it would have to be a one-on-one thing. You know, I would want to be with somebody, because despite what you can learn, I guess, some basics online, but to actually be with somebody and to walk through that, you can learn it by actually being there and seeing what somebody's doing. And I think it's an in-person thing would be the most valuable way to do that. I think the most wary I'd be is any kind of, you see that it's the bottom line as they're talking about money. Be booked all the time, or how I made nonstop. You know, when they're focusing on the money thing, those are the ones I'd be the most wary of.
Yeah.
And the truth probably lies somewhere, you know, in the middle there, because I don't think it's for what I thought about that too. And I was talking to somebody about that. Like, if I have no interest in really doing this at this point, but if people were to contact me and said, boy, I'd want to learn, and I would have to really consider how I would even charge somebody, because what is that worth to you? What is your collective information that you've built up throughout these years? And could it be 10 grand? Could it be 20 grand?
Yeah.
And then,
but I mean, a lot of people are literally looking for, like, okay, where's my turnkey solution? Where's my,
it doesn't work.
You know, like, how do you're successful right now. How do I basically take your template and just apply it to me? And, you know, I hate sounding like this guy, but like I have a background in instructional design, and so many of these things like are designed so poorly from a learning perspective. They're like, you kind of have to interpret stuff, put your own pieces together, and like, it's not necessarily like a one-on-one thing. Usually it's just like, here, we're going to have a group call. You can ask some questions, and they're very hands-off. You're right that a one-on-one is inevitably better, but it almost needs to be very specific. Like, if somebody, like I used to do some mentoring here and there a few years ago, and then I just stopped because it was just too much of a time suck. But you know, like I've had new photographers come to me asking to mentor, and I'd say, well, where are you at with your business? And they say, well, I'm just starting out. I say, okay, well, the discussion's over. I'm not interested. And they're like, why not? I'm like, because I was like, I can't get you from 0 to 100 in 3 months. Like, that just doesn't happen. You have to, like, I'd work with someone who is an established business, who's been around for a while, and who wants specific help with Facebook ads, or specific help with like a website audit, or like a systems integration thing. But, you know, for you saying like, oh, I got nothing, help me. No.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And that's funny. And what I remember saying when I was talking to this person about this mentoring, and I would say, you know, how can you, and you're right, there would have to be some kind of an evaluation process. why would you just take anybody in? My words would be, I would be like the Harvard of boudoir. You don't just take anybody. Mm-hmm. I would have to sit down and talk to this person. I would always take the people that I can see are doing excellent right now that needed to move themselves to like sort of a different level. What would be the point in investing all your time and energy in someone who just doesn't have, what it takes? And that's kind of mean to say, or something like that. But.
Well, a lot of people have a lot of really gifted talent as photographers. I think you can make it as a photographer having limited photography skills and great marketing skills versus the other way around. There's definitely one person who operates in and around the Toronto area who I just look at and I go, man, like these images are just, they're okay, but they're just really blah. And I mean, she charges next to nothing. And it's like, and I go, but you know what? I'm okay with that because those aren't my customers, right? Like, I don't want the person who only wants to spend $400. Like, I would drive myself crazy shooting all day long, every day, for no amount of money. What I do applaud her on is being fantastically amazing at marketing herself. Themed photo shoots and really active Facebook community and stuff like that. Like, that's good on you. Like, that's like, as I say, I don't begrudge any photographer for having more or less skills than I do. But do they create something that somebody likes and somebody will buy? If the answer is yes, then they're probably going to be successful. And we can gauge each other on artistic merit if we want, but this isn't a photo competition, it's business. So who's the better business person at the end of the day? That's who wins.
Yeah, and you're right. You don't have to be the world's best photographer to be successful. And I guess that comes down to someone's definition of success as well. And I was always under the impression, or this is the way that I operated, that you wanted to be the best, or you were never satisfied, that you would look at every session that you did and say, oh, I screwed this up, and oh, I screwed this up, and always making these mental notes over the years and moving forward and trying to be the best that you could be. And that's how this all comes differently. And that was my thought, that was the foundation needed to be there. You need to be solid at those fundamentals, because when you're with somebody in a session, there's so many other things going on. Like you were talking about directing a person and doing this. You don't want to be fumbling with your camera and worry what you're doing there. You need to have that part down pat so you can conduct everything else that's going on in that session and dealing with the person and not having to worry about, setting cameras and not getting the photos. The marketing is a whole nother thing, and that's a function of education. Now you can learn that online. Yep. And money. And the more you invest, you're going to start to get that back. And I think, I don't know about you, but my marketing goes up and up in every single year. I spend a small fortune on marketing. At this point, I've learned a little bit. I know what I'm going to get back from that. And, that so many people are only going to come and randomly stumble across you. There's only going to be so many people that are friends of friends. But that avenue opens those doors to people who may not have otherwise found you. And you can certainly get in the face of as many people as you want to, and you're going to get a certain return on that done properly. So marketing, I think, is something that's completely overlooked for a lot of people that are starting, and they don't have the budget to do it, and they don't have the skills to do it either. Yeah,
well, I mean, that old adage of, you have to spend money to make money is so true. As a photographer, I couldn't think of a more true statement that I could make or piece of advice I could give to any new photographer. Like if somewhere between 10 and 25% of every dollar you make is not being put back into some kind of marketing, whether it be going to smaller trade shows or Facebook, Instagram ads, or pick something else if you want, but you're right. You're only going to reach so many people, because you have to. What I guess my goal has always been is I want to attract one new person and have them tell two of their friends and have those two friends come in. But I keep needing new people, because eventually you run out of a friend group and there's just no more. And that's where it really comes in. And your point earlier of where you said, you're striving to refine your photography craft after every shoot and look at, what did I screw up? What did I do right? And all that kind of stuff. I've always tried to do that with the marketing side of things, like what is working, what is not, how could I, what if I spent a little bit more, what would happen? What are the Google Analytics on my site look like, like setting up conversions and ClickFunnels and all this kind of stuff to direct people to ultimately booking with me. Those are the things that really make you as a photographer, not so much what aperture did you use.
Right, and it's not something just specific to what we do. That's just marketing in general. A whole nother discipline that you have to learn how to do that, and it is tricky.
And if you don't know it, get on to Fiverr and find someone who knows, right? Like, there's no shame in saying, I don't know how to do something. I don't know how to do accounting. I can do basic bookkeeping, but when it comes to accounting, I'd rather stab my brain with a Q-tip. It's not my fun thing to do. So I pay somebody to do that for me. Just as retouching, I can do it. I don't want to do it. So therefore, I outsource that. And anything that's like really high end that I would only entrust by me, then I do it, right? But otherwise, just understand what your weaknesses are and work around them. Obviously, you can't, if you're super weak at photography, you can't outsource that. But you can definitely outsource probably 80% of what a photographer does on their day-to-day basis and find someone who can help you with that. But looking for the turnkey solution isn't necessarily the best way to do it. There are usually independent contractors, which will probably be a better solution for you and probably more cost-effective too. And there's your one-on-one, right? Like if you're looking for marketing help and setting up a Google AdWords campaign, it's probably better to find someone who specializes in that rather than trying to just do it all yourself. Because we are, as we said before, we're people who are photographers are people who very much like to do everything themselves. They love to be control freaks and I mean, I come from a managing teams background and I love going, here, somebody else do this, not me. Like if you can learn that lesson, you can really make yourself a really, very successful, I think.
Yeah. So if you were starting today, let's say you woke up this morning as that person who decided it was your goal to make women beautiful, really didn't know anything about photography. My hunch is you go to the Google machine or to YouTube and start watching some videos, but you think personally, where would you start? What do you think would be the most important thing to learn?
I think like before I started outsourcing, I'd be at a level where I've got a bunch of clients. I'm not anywhere near booked solid at this point, but I realize that like it's an awareness thing. Like I'm not getting clients because I just don't have awareness. And for most people, the Facebook ad network kind of thing is daunting. Like, what type of ad do I set up? Oh my God, I'm presented with 8 options right to start. And then
it's very arcane.
It is very difficult to learn. And I mean, I have an intermediate at best knowledge of it. And I could probably set up my own things, but to set up, like chat bots and whatnot like that, like at a certain point I'd start going, okay, well, if I said, I'm going to, like when you get to a certain size, you say, okay, now I have to start putting money aside. Like I can't just be like, I do a session, I make $1,000 profit off of it after all my expenses are paid, and that $1,000 instantly gets paid to me. Now I have to take that $1,000 and I have to take a portion of that and put that into like a little bit of a squirrel fund and just put that away separately. And once you've built up enough of that, say like anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000, now you start going, okay, what do I want to do first? Do I want to do like a chatbot? Do I want to do Facebook ads? Do I want to do Instagram ads, which are sort of the same thing? Or do I want to do Google ads? Like what do I want to do when you pick one and you say, okay, well, and you set yourself a budget and you say like, okay, what do I want to spend per month? And spending $100 a month is in reality nothing. So, like, could I sustain $500 a month in Google ads or $500 a month in something else? What is it going to return for me? How many extra clients is this going to generate for me? How can I track this? And those are questions that an outsourced person can answer for you. And there are so many, if you just simply get onto Google and you go like Facebook ad specialist, all you find is big corporate entities working with, huge companies. And that's not who you want. You want to go search on places like Fiverr or I'm totally blanking on the other job sites, but like, like gig sites, right? Like they're really skilled people. They may not be the best of the best, but all you need to do is just have somebody who's going to look out for your best interest and try to help you grow. And if you are very clear about what it is you want to achieve and what your objectives are, like if your objective is to get eyes on your site and then retarget those people and then get them onto specific landing pages, and then eventually get them through a booking thing or get them to sign up to your e-newsletter list and stuff, then if you're clear about what those objectives are, that's great. And if the person on the other end is just like, well, I don't know what to do, I can just set up a Facebook ad for you, probably the wrong person. You want somebody who maybe can guide you a little bit and help you out. But there's some really qualified people on these gig sites that really know their stuff, and they're what they do is they just manage multiple people at a time, and that's how they make their money. And it's kind of passive income because they just have to kind of do stuff as required. I wouldn't be signing on to somebody who's like, you're going to pay me like X number of dollars a month unless I knew what they were doing, because I am not just going to like light money on fire and just give it to them.
Hand it out.
But you just have to find the solution that works for you. But once you get to that certain size of business where you're like, okay, I think I want to do this, marketing is just the next step. And putting money towards that is important. And, if you can do that, man, that's great. Just don't think you can do it all for free with a private Facebook group and stuff like that. Those are great tools, but they're not the end all solution. Because, if Facebook takes that away from you, you're kind of screwed. And let's face it, Facebook does not like us boudoir photographers.
No, everything's being hidden. And I think the piece of advice I would give to somebody when it comes to marketing is like one of those healthy habits. Like if you were to start exercising, people, they do 5 push-ups. If you go to the gym one time, you're not going to see results. You can't like run an ad for a week and expect your life to change. Mm-hmm. Like exercise, it takes how long? A year, 6 months before you start to notice any difference in yourself or get stronger, and you just got to keep doing it. I think that is something in that same way. There isn't necessarily an immediate return because it takes a while for people to see you, and they need to see you a couple times, and then they may check your website and they may come back 2 or 3 times before they even contact you. But it's a long-term thing. It's not you spend $500 and you expect to get that back and then some immediately. It's a long investment, I think, with not a lot of visible return at first, and then it's slowly as you start to figure it out. And what I wonder too, and I never investigated this, there's got to be some really small niche, like mom and pop or single person type marketing agencies that work just with photographers out there somewhere.
But that's why I think the gig thing is so good, because they could be a smaller operation and that's just how they market themselves.
Someone who just does that.
Yes.
I think the targeting is important, and not getting too deep into this, but it could be so granular with Facebook or with Google. You could target just people who just got engaged.
Yeah.
If you want bridal.
That was actually one of the things that I walked away from at WPPI with, like as far as an idea goes, is just like marketing to very specific groups of people, like not just brides, like that's hyper competitive, but other things like people who like a very specific thing that ties in with with boudoir, and then could be divorcees. It could be anything, but just making like that specific landing page that speaks directly to them, that you can target through Facebook. Because those of you that have never used the Facebook like audience planner thing, I don't even think that's the right term for it, but where you can basically like put up characteristics and then save that as a profile for someone. It is scary how granular, the custom audiences, it is scary how granular that is. And Facebook's a great marketing tool because we all just gave Facebook all of our information. And I mean, that audience tool is basically what Cambridge Analytica used against us.
And you can use it. Well, and in your sense, you can target, like I said, moms or 35 to 30 to 35 getting engaged within the next year, or getting married, or severing our anniversary within the next year, within a certain area around you, and you can send out the ads to these people. So you can be super granular, and it takes a little bit of seeing what works for you again, and you could target exactly the people that you want. Yeah. To like you.
But that's the other thing that most new photographers don't understand. They're just like, okay, well, I'll photograph anyone for no amount of money, and they've never figured out who their actual target audience is. Like when you start out, you're just like free sessions. And
I think that's okay,
and that's fine. There's nothing
when you're first starting.
It's just in long term when you're offering a $300 session with all the digital images. Like, what are you doing? You're never going to make any money. You will be spinning your wheels, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm shooting all these people. Look at what I'm doing. And then when you have to raise your prices, like all the people who said you're great and you're super affordable, those people no longer want to deal with you, and you're like, crap, now I have no customers, right? Like, when I started out, I did not do the free stuff or the inexpensive stuff. I kind of looked at my market in the area and figured out like where the pricing was at, and I priced myself like 90% of what the top people were priced at, because I just didn't want to be the bottom feeder. And it worked out pretty good for me, because I ended up with like a pretty good client base, and they've always recognized me as not the cheapest, but one of the best. So,
and that's positioning yourself too. And the price is only one part of the overall cost. And this goes down another whole avenue of how to structure that one. But when people are first starting, I think they're just super excited the first time somebody contacts them, and they're like, me? You want me to take your picture? So you're going to do it. And it's funny because you can't see my smartphone. I have my smartphone. I had doing a little bit of an experiment. Like I had done maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where I downloaded a time app. I don't even know what you call it. It's like it tracks your job time. So I was curious, like how much time I invested with any one person, and I forget it was like several years ago. And every time you talk to them or email them, or when you're in the session, or remarkably when you're working on their photos afterward, you could start and stop this job timer to see your total time that you put into one session, and then you can use that amount of time and divide it by what you got from them. And the result is that you'll kind of be shocked to see, how much time versus what you're charging somebody. You're like, it was like, what was that movie? $2 an hour.
Yeah. No, I think that exercise is so valuable for so many different genres of photography, especially wedding photographers. Like if you're charging less than about $4,000 or $5,000 for a wedding, are you nuts? Because like by the time you put in all the effort and the production and the editing and the meetings and the back and forth, like, man, that hourly rate looks pretty scary. It's just you see that big ticket sale and you think you're like going to be a millionaire, and it's not always the case.
You look over the time, and that's because I was working on that for a new blog post. Although now everything kind of died out.
Yeah.
But I was going to track about 4 or 5 clients as we get into this, and list exactly how much time I spent with them, and just for like a little bit of an eye opener, I thought it would be a fun thing to revisit that. And so I would challenge anybody to do that same thing. I don't know, the app that I have, it's called Boosted. It's on Android. It's just a free time tracking app. And then from your first interaction with somebody to the actual photo session to what you're working on afterwards, just remember to click that button and time everything out so you can see your total time invested, and then look at what you're charging somebody. And again, if you're new, you're just happy to be photographing somebody, and that's okay. But as you get settled and as you move along, this is a business.
Yeah.
And if you are looking to get something out of it, that's where you have to start making those changes and start valuing that time. And then understanding that, you're going to be placing yourself somewhere in the market. And as I talk to people too, I don't think that Louis Vuitton shutters and they bring their board together in a meeting and go, guys, Target's releasing a purse for $12. It's time for us to close the doors.
Right.
Why would somebody buy that then? So it's things that people don't quite understand, but it's the same reason why Mercedes-Benz can exist when Hyundai, no one walks into a Mercedes-Benz dealer and goes, you're selling your cars for $80,000. I can get a used Hyundai down the street for $10,000. If you want me to buy your car, you're going to give it to me at the same price as the guy down the street. There's certain situations where that would kind of be foolish to say, and nobody does. And these brands differentiate themselves. But why? And that's the $1 million question that you have to learn. And it does work.
Who
and I think
is
people are always
your
fearful.
customer?
Right. And I think people are always fearful at first of saying, ooh, but
yeah, you know what? I've had a rash of inquiries over the last, week or so. And, hey, I just want the digital images. How much for just that? And then I tell them, and they're like, what? Why is it more than the album? Well, I said, because I don't my digital images are priced that way. I'd much rather you have the book. And they're like, what? Okay, how did this not be like a $500 session? And I said, because that's not what I do. And the ability to say no is sometimes the most empowering thing you can have as a photographer. If we're going to bring it right back to empowerment, know who your customer is. And just because you're like, oh, shoot, I need some work right now, doesn't mean you take the wrong job, because that just leads you down the path of always taking that wrong job. So be smart about who your client is.
I don't know if you've run into this, but I think also too, this is going to sound horrible, but I think you run into more of those issues as you go lower and lower and lower. You run into more and more problems.
The lower your price, the more headaches you have. It's not mo money, mo problems. It's low money, mo problems.
No problem.
It's like
people want more.
Yeah. People who are willing to invest in what you do and in themselves. In our case, they people who get it. People who
we're giving away a lot of good information.
Yeah, I know.
It's a lot of hard-earned stuff.
Exactly,
but that's okay.
That's fine. I'd rather help the industry stop, just pricing at the bottom. And if there were 10 photographers that listened to this that said, yeah, you know what, maybe that isn't the right way to do this. Maybe I should price a little higher so I can afford to market, so I can afford to attract better clients, so I can stop being the person who's doing the $300 photo shoot with all the high-res images that are all retouched that you spent hours and hours and hours retouching. But there are levels. And
what happens is everything is related to the other. So if you're going to come along and suddenly you're in for $1,000 like a person, you need to be that Mercedes. So your website and the content and the copywriting and the photos need to be reflective of that level of business. So one thing is intimately related to the other. So that brings us to another whole thing too. Yeah, your website is your storefront. So that needs to look like $1,000 plus a person website. If you just have some homemade kind of freebie, Weebly kind of, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think you're going to.
No, your site has to reflect you, and it has to look good. And, one of the other bonus pieces of advice I'd give anybody is if you have a website, every year, usually in December when it quiets down for me, after all the Christmas rush is over, I usually have 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how the weeks play out into January. And that is my time for review. So it's systems review. What subscriptions am I paying for? And then I have friends and family and other people go through my site and say, hey, pretend you're going to be a customer. Go through the site. Subscribe to stuff. Do things. Tell me what you think. And report back. and I'll buy you dinner, you know? And
Do you do your own website, or you have someone who does that?
I do my own. I guess I could probably have somebody else do it, but I mean, at this point, it's kind of just like little tweak here and there, and it's not that hard for me because I have a bit of a web background. So I could outsource it, but to be honest, it might take me longer. It might take me longer to find someone than it would just to do it.
I do it myself too, and I think there's pluses and minuses to that because I'm someone who's constantly changing things in there, like all the time. And that is another whole time suck that I have to get a little bit more control of because I'm constantly updating things. Ooh, this should be better over here. Ooh, this should be better over here, and moving it. And it takes a long time, I think, to learn how to do web design.
I mean, I've been using WordPress now for like 8-10 years.
Oh, really? I didn't think your site was a WordPress.
Well, what did you think it was? I'm curious.
I didn't know.
Cool.
I don't know. Usually WordPress, I don't know. Yeah. I've had just WordPresses as a blog, in the past. But no, that was not my. Which was, I guess that's a kind of a.
I guess so, yeah. But for my next iteration of my website, I'd probably just hire a company to just do it, because site optimization is as good as it can get on that site with that platform with that template. So if I'm going to change over templates and themes and all that kind of stuff, I'll eventually have to, maybe look at having somebody else do it for me who's a professional web developer. And then maybe installing some custom stuff. Who knows? But at the moment, things are working just fine. But that's kind of on the 2-year plan. Like roughly 18 months from now, I start looking for someone and saying, hey, you know what could we do to improve? Because
you get sick of it. Like, see, I get tired, and I realize a lot of people may just be seeing it for the first time, but in my mind, I'm looking at it all the time. So I'm like, it's time to refresh. I got to change this, or I got to change my font here, or so forth. But I do something that's funny. You mentioned the same thing. I will change something on my website, and I will go to women that I know and say, take a look at this and be my focus group and tell me what I did right. Well, and what don't you like about this.
That's also the beauty of having a Facebook community. Is like you can offer up something like, if I said, hey, if somebody wants to help me out with this, I'm looking for a focus group, and I'll give you like a $300 product credit that you can use towards buying the wall art you didn't buy or extra images or whatever. And people who will help me, they'll have to work for that $300, but at the end of the day, you're getting like actual customers to do this. There's a bonus to doing it that way with people who are already familiar with you, but also people who have never heard of you are also sometimes the better option in those cases. But sometimes I'll take even past clients, like they're not like super familiar with the site, they're super familiar with the experience. So if you can't just say, here, go to the site and then just figure out what you like and what you don't. You kind of have to have an idea of what you might want them to look at and what processes that you would want them to go through. But, if you at least have something, like it's almost like having a hypothesis and then testing your hypothesis, right? Rather than just having testing. Yeah, like you just don't want to introduce confirmation bias into them. Like you have to say like, all right, without being too specific about what you want them to do. It's just like, I want you to look at this aspect. I want you to pretend to be a brand new customer. I want you to just things like that. And those are. Here's
a question I want to get. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I was just going to say it's hugely advantageous. Now,
how much do you focus on your galleries as far as what you want them to represent? Do you ever get feedback from anybody as far as the content you put in there, as it's too much this way or too conservative or right in the middle, or is that not even a thought to you?
Well, the images that end up on my site, on one hand, it's really upsetting because of Facebook, because Facebook doesn't just look at your ads, it looks at the landing pages and then plus a couple pages from there, so things that are linked off to it. So sometimes I have to be careful about the stuff I put on my site because of having
won't get approved.
Yeah, because Facebook might not approve of that. They may disapprove an ad because of site content. So the homepage isn't necessarily as it could be more risque. It could be more in line with what I shoot, but it's probably 80% of what's there. I do, in some cases, dumb down some of those images and make them a little bit softer. Not to say that I shoot erotic stuff or anything, but just, things like hand bras. Facebook hates that. And, like I'm not going to be offended by a nipple. It's just a nipple. Grow the F up and just understand it's a nipple. And I could have a beautiful shot, artistically done, and there happens to be a nipple. But if Facebook sees that through one of their AI things, it gets pissed off at you and then blacklists all your ads. So you have to be careful about what you're putting on your site. And it sounds stupid because you're thinking, like, what's my site got to do with my Facebook ads? It has something to do with the ads, because I used to have stuff get bounced all the time because I had a few nudes on the homepage. And once I took those off, magically ads were getting approved. So it was annoying, to say the least.
So there's a consideration.
There is definitely a consideration. And then further to that aspect of it, it's just like, what body types do I put on? That's a big one to me. I want as many different ethnicities as I can possibly get. I don't want cropped images. I need people's faces visible, so I will twice a year do model calls so I can get people in and I know I can use the images later. But I have to have different body types too. I have to speak to all the people that I photograph, and they also can't be all 20 to 25. If somebody is on my site who's that age, it's just because it's like a killer image. Most of my images, I'm trying to show women who are 30 plus. And as many different body shapes, ethnicities as possible. And that's one of the things.
So it's overt. You're definitely trying to have the range on there.
I'm definitely trying to make sure that is a big part of what I portray, because I want some girl who's maybe got, like, I don't know, Indian descent background. I want her to look at my site and go, oh, there's somebody like me. There's somebody who's African American. Go, oh, that's me. Like, somebody who's plus size, that's me. I don't, like, that's the important part, and representation matters for a lot of people, and I understand that. I mean, I want people to see themselves on my site. In obviously it's somebody else, but I want them to at least see that I welcome that. And what's harder is to show, like, queer, gay, like you can't show that in an individual type thing. And I'm not going to call out somebody saying this person was gay, this person was queer. Like that's not my place to say on the site. But, like, I want to have as many people represented as possible, because I think that's important for people to see.
And do you also, and we may have talked about this before, that I always was more safe. I kept things very, within those two standard deviations. I really didn't want to put things too tame or too extreme on there, and figuring most people are okay. And I always wondered whether, if somebody wanted to do something like more nudity or something like that, not seeing that on there would not get you those. Yeah, well, those
I get those questions, and like people will sheepishly ask me during the wardrobe consult, like, "Is it okay if we do like some topless or nude?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." The only reason you don't see that on the site so much is because I got to be careful with what I have on it, because Facebook ads won't run if. And I try to explain that, but I'm sure there's definitely a lot of stuff there. And I mean, I have galleries on the site that are kind of a little harder to find, that are kink based, some bodyscape nudes, but I've also labeled the headings. Like, I didn't call them nudes, I called them birthday suits. So just so I could kind of mask, so Facebook
looking for keywords,
so Facebook wouldn't be as wise to it. And it really sucks that stupid Zuckerberg has basically made the body just like this offensive thing, because there's a bunch of people out there that have issue with this, it drives me crazy. And I mean, if you don't want to see it, don't look, please, but don't It's definitely frustrating.
With a company like that, it's always just going to be francs and beans.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be the lowest common denominator, and that's who they have to, you know, target everything toward. And we're in a business that's very tough to advertise on Facebook. And I'm sure, like me, I can't tell you that I have countless photos that I uploaded not approved. I even went as far as one point just to like pixelate everything and just put a face, and the whole body would all be just as a kind of like a, you know, pixelate everything in the pictures. But it is a struggle. But one thing I was always like super conservative. And then one thing definitely that I've changed over the past year, and talking about getting feedback from people, which is important. And I would have clients come in and they would say to me, well, I really want to do something wild. And I'd be like, isn't this wild enough? You know, so I was really keeping the reins on with people. And it turned out that there were a certain amount of group that wanted to do something a little bit more than I was used to doing. And so I know over the past, to talk to some people, I added some more content on my website that I wouldn't typically have, more erotic like type content or couples type content, just because it seemed there was like this, I don't want to say pent up demand, but if people don't see that, they may feel that you may not accommodate that type of work for them. So it was a little challenging for me to change up in that regard, because I didn't want to go too far. But there's been a positive feedback. I've also included that in a lot of my customer materials, where I would say, you know, this may not be for everybody, but if you're into this, or this, it's all okay.
That's one of the things. It's funny you mentioned that, because it's kind of on the hit list of things to do. Is just like I have to start. Like, my site is very much geared to the solo woman doing this for herself. There's like a little subsection like kink, little subsection for art nudes, little subsection for couples, but like I need to have that more front and center on the site so people can get to it more easily. And I kind of have to like, sometimes what I do is I just like, okay, I look at the homepage, I'll either print it out or I'll just kind of like scratch it down on a page. Like, where else could I put this so that people will know that I do this? And designing, you know, the problem is you're designing for a phone now, not a desktop.
Yeah, you're making two sites. You're right.
That's really, well, I mean, everything is just like like I guess what do you call it? A scalable thing nowadays.
Website doesn't work. That's good. My Wix isn't super 100% scalable. When you click the mobile, it involves me always going in there and tweaking things.
See, like mine will just adaptively respond. It's responsive. That's what it is. Like, so mine will respond. But I mean, like, you can only scroll so much. Like, I used to have more portfolio images on the homepage, and I think it was like 15. And on a desktop, it looks great. On an iPad, it looks great. But on a phone, it's just like you'd never stop seeing pictures, and people would never get below that. So
I've changed my galleries because of that.
Now it's just like a lazy load with a load more button for the phones, so that if you get past 4 images, then it's like, do you want to see more? Okay, here you go. But you have to prompt it, so they would get below that, which is where all the next step booking stuff comes from. So it's designing for and testing this stuff mobile is probably one of the most underrated things people do. Because I can tell you right now, I am 70-30 mobile versus desktop use. And I don't think anybody else is far off of that.
Galleries are tough on a phone.
Yeah.
You're right, because I had to make everything side scroll and not go up and down. The photos went side to side because I had a whole page gallery, and then I realized the same thing. You would go on the gallery page, it would be like
you just keep scrolling
60 pages long. I'm like, who the hell is going to go through all?
And it's like a wall to getting to the next content, which is the stuff that says like, contact me.
Yeah, more like Instagram, where you just go from side to side, and the photos go, so you could slide through them from left to right.
Yeah.
So, boy, we've been talking about a lot of stuff
did.
here. We'll wrap this up in a moment or two. This is like a chock full. Yeah, we weren't planning anything.
I thought we were just going to talk about the virus, and this went somewhere else, and this is going to be great.
That's all right.
So this is going to be everyone's isolation project, to take what we said and do this.
Well, that's funny, because on my little notepad of things, it's not going to focus, was virus tasks. I was going to ask you, now that everyone's home, or all these things that we're talking about here today, what are a few good things you think people can work on? And we can certainly talk about some of these things we've talked about today. But
I think now you've got a ton of opportunity to, I think, look at market. I'm going to be looking at marketing almost exclusively, and just saying, okay, it's taking some of those WPPI examples, like really hyper targeting select groups of people and developing customer profiles for very select. Like, I thought I was very select when I said, like, okay, like just women who are interested in doing this, who are between a certain age and have this like level education and whatnot. I thought that was super targeted. I'm going next level granular. And so I'm going to be dishing ads to very few people, but to people I think are going to be very much into what I offer. And those landing pages that they're going to hit, are going to be designed such that there's no menu structure. It's like, there's a landing page, you're stuck on this page so that you don't go somewhere else. You're
copying my landing pages.
Yeah, exactly, and everybody else's, right? But like, I used to point to blog posts, and that is a huge mistake, because then people can click off all the sidebar stuff and they can do all the top level menus. Like, I want them to do what I got them there for, which is to then get onto either an email drip campaign or to reach out and contact me, whatever the objective is, but just do that. Schedule a consult. I want people to do that. So I want to come up with some very specific ads for very specific genres of photography,
landing pages,
and make
landing
really
pages for them attached to your website.
Yeah, really specific stuff. No, none of this like just broad. Like, I'm still going to do broad awareness stuff, but I want that's great, except, if you reach the right person and you put something right in front of them, like, hey, that's awesome. Like, when you, like, everybody's got that one Instagram ad, they went like, oh, I have to click this, like, that's what I want.
You're taking it to the next level. Yeah.
So I think that's one of my big projects. And then, I think, because I've already done my subscription review, like what things am I paying for? Do I need to be paying for them? Especially when times are tight like this. Like, if you've got a subscription to a service you're using infrequently, you might want to chop it for a little while. Like, I had an Animoto thing, which I used fairly frequently. But right now I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think that's expendable. That's $20-something I can have back every month. And if I need it, I'll get it again.
Can always re-add it.
There's no harm in taking it off for a period of time. That's why I also would recommend people, like, unless you know that service is like going to be absolutely invaluable to you, never pay for the annual thing. Just go monthly. Because that way, when you, like, if you realize there's something better or this isn't working, you're not out a bunch of money. Because your annual subscription always seems to come up right before you do your audit, and then it's like, oh crap, I've already paid for the year.
Or right during a time when suddenly you could use that money for something else. You know, it's just $600 missing from your account.
Yeah, be smart about that. And I know in the short term it's more appealing to do the annual thing, but in the long term, it's sometimes better just to go month by month, and then you can at least chop it when you need to, and not be out money.
Good tip. I think one thing that I have been working on in my quarantine is my blogging. And, since I am a big want to bring the control back to me type person, I think it's something that people need to revisit, and because you can control everything. Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest can't stop you from putting whatever content you want on your own blog. And so I am more or less a very prolific writer anyway. Just one of these people give me 10 minutes and I can sit there.
I am the exact opposite.
You have no idea. And it just comes out of, I have a whole Google Keep thing full of all things that I'm working on, topics and so forth. And actually there was a article I'm just finishing up over the past couple of days about teaching people how to rethink their blog, and how in 2020, basically Google does not care. And what most photographers do is like Miss L's boudoir session. That really gives you no value. to your website. It's nice to show some photos, but nobody as a customer is ever going on to Google and typing in Miss L's boudoir session. Google wants you to provide answers and great information for questions that people may have. So it's about reframing your blogging in terms of answering questions and providing value to people around you. And then it's remarkable how, and blogging is one of these things too. There's no immediate result. You're going to make that great, and there's going to be no change. It takes months for that to kick in. But as that does, you will slowly start finding more and 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 more people coming to your website, and your website starts to build up authority, which tends to raise all of your pages in the listings. But it's work. It's work that you could tell everybody how to do it. A very tiny, teeny fraction of people are ever going to follow through, just because, like any other habit, it's very hard to get into doing that. But it's one of those things that really can pay off.
It really helps your SEO when you start dropping in like appropriate keywords just in a kind of sneaky way. More so for Google, like less so for the readability of the people looking at it. But just like stuff they wouldn't even know. But just for me, putting in Toronto boudoir photographer instead of just, in a relevant spot,
somewhere where it fits.
And then that just, so when people are searching that term, all of a sudden your top 3 of like people out there for authority, and sometimes ranking higher on Google is great. And the secret is you don't need one of those SEO companies to do it. You just need to blog, write copy for your site that's very useful. And that tip you just gave with Miss L's session versus how Miss L prepared for her boudoir session. Like, I don't know, like I'm trying to rephrase it, but like
Nashua,
right, exactly. And
just small,
but just like those are the things people search, and those are the things people end up on. And it's amazing how much of a benefit that is for you in the long run. Like just blogging pretty pictures, you're wasting you're not wasting your time, you're half wasting your time.
Right. And that's what most, and not just in boudoir, but photographers in general, that's all they do is blog sessions. And it's nice to put your pictures up there because, again, a lot of these things will get taken down anywhere else, but it's not helping you.
It's true.
In a sense that of bringing traffic, and that's a whole top. You can go down that wormhole with blogging and talk about that for hours and how technical and there's as many experts and bloggers as there are experts in photography trying to tell you what to do, and it's hard to weed through and understand. But I think the bottom line is just write. Don't worry about that. Just write answers, topical things that you think your customers may be interested in. Don't worry about keywords so much at first. Just write. And then over time, that will just start to build your website and build your traffic. And it may not all be customers. You'll find, like I find people from all over the world coming to my website. So someone in Sydney, Australia isn't necessarily my customer, but that raising tide, it just lifts your whole website, and more people will. It's amazing. And how that will boost your traffic over time.
So true.
So good talk.
Yeah, man, this was good. This is like there's some juicy stuff in there for everybody. So
yeah, this is like
I'm hoping this goes
graduate level.
I'm hoping this goes up pretty soon. And then we're all
I'm so bored and not doing it. I could even do this today or later.
Yeah, nice. So this will be great. So it gives some people some real actionable items to go look at, and not just silly stuff, like meaningful long-term stuff, because that's, you got time right now, everybody. So
got nothing but time. When you're in the joint, you got nothing
take
but time.
Netflix breaks if you got to, but I
can only watch so many movies. My brain is always in that working mode. Like if I'm doing something, I feel like I should be doing something to make my business better.
I agree, but everybody needs a good Netflix break every now and again.
If I knew we were going to be this deep, I would have stretched out. I would have been doing some pumping some iron. I would have been like,
I did all my workouts before we jumped on, so I was good to go.
You're good. See, all my gyms are shut down. So I'm a big jiu-jitsu guy. So I go in a couple nights a week to get the crap beat out of me by people that weigh like 50, 80 pounds more than me. And I'm working out, and I don't look like it, But, so I miss that. And that's, I guess I get out a lot of my stress and tension is doing that. So
I took the opposite route this morning. I just did some yoga. So it was like,
I haven't done anything yet. So I got to stretch from lying around. I can feel how tight my legs are. My body just feels so stiff and tight from not being on the go all the time. I don't want to get too used to lying around watching movies on Netflix. But thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. This was good times
to do. Like powerful, dense content today. So we'll get this out over the next day or so. I don't do a lot of editing. I'm lucky I can edit pictures, let alone editing like blogs. So whatever we say,
stop, upload, done.
That's it.
That's the way to do it.
And not hiring any blog editors, just putting it out there. So good talk.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we're doing it here, and everybody just needs to stay safe, stay busy with your doing something. There's plenty of things that you can do to fill your time. There's a couple of things that we talked about: marketing, blogging, working on some pictures, and being ready for when things calm down a little bit. And I'll leave Trevor to tell you where you can find him.
So,
got any questions?
Yeah, I guess find me, follow me at Provocateur_images on Instagram. You can hit my website, provocateurimages.ca. After that, like just those are the two main ones. Yeah, like those are the fun ones. Hit me up with some messages if you want. If you have any questions, those are the two best places to contact me.
We have a lot of listeners
now.
I
know you're doing great. Like I really love the fact that you've grown this.
Kind of. Hundreds of people now download these episodes. Who knows how exact those stats are, but you could just see more and more.
Hey, as long as there's growth, that's all that matters, right?
Downloads. This isn't a show for everybody, just for people who like listening to other photographers. But, as long as I have the time, like anything else, I'll keep doing this little by little. And it's fun to do, and we can help some people out. That's, I think, what it's all about.
We're going to get through this. Let's just keep going.
Stay safe. Thanks for coming on.